Good afternoon. My name is Paul Alkiotis. I'm the Norwood Planning and Economic Development Director. I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon for this business forum. The town of Norwood has been working hard to address the impacts that we've all had, that we've been dealing with related to the pandemic. We've had a series of public forums like this for the restaurant owners to provide them with information on what they need to open up for business. I want to thank our partners this afternoon, the Norwood Regional Chamber of Commerce and the Friends of Norwood Center. This afternoon, we're going to brief you on what we've been doing at the town of Norwood to address the impacts and to focus in on what the business owners need to know to open up for business. I want to start off by introducing Sigal Reese, our Public Health Director, and she's going to speak for a while about what businesses need to do to prepare for reopening. Sigal?
Great. Thank you, Paul. If we could go ahead and make me the presenter, I'll pull up the presentation. Great, thank you. Great, can you guys all see that?
Yep.
Okay, just want to make sure. There's a little delay, so if you feel like I'm going faster than the slides, I'll try and slow down to make sure that you guys can see it too. There we go. So Paul just went over it, but this is our quick agenda. I'd like to talk about a lot of the reopening plan and sort of the guidelines and safety standards we're receiving from the state, but I do want to have a dialogue. So if you have any questions while I'm speaking, feel free to interrupt or write something in the chat box. And I just ask my colleagues if I don't see something in the chat box, because what I see now with sharing my screen, I can't see everybody, to just interrupt me and mention there's a question. Because I think it'll be a lot more useful for everybody if I can answer your direct questions as well as provide the information. So there's the agenda, and then we'll go through those other topics once we finish going over all the COVID-related safety protocols. There we go. I think Paul said it, but definitely want to thank Charlotte and the Friends and the Chamber, and we have a great team that has really been working to both balance the economic development and also the safety protocols that we have to follow, but I think working together is always the best way, and we have a great team here, so we're very fortunate. And of course, want to thank all of our public officials also for supporting us during this. The Board of Selectmen, Economic Development Committee, and the Planning Board. So I want to definitely thank everybody. And thank you all for joining us too. So we all know about the phased reopening. We just entered yesterday into phase 2, which was a very big step. There will be additional steps within phase 2, just to complicate it even more. But our goal is we want our local businesses to open and prosper while also protecting public health. And I think both goals are definitely attainable. What's great is a lot of the movement and the opening through the phases is very data dependent, and we're always watching those data trends. For the most part on a statewide level, but we also watch them on a local level. We look at the numbers every day. We don't have as many of the figures that the state has just because of the size of the population and the data that we have access to. But looking on the state level definitely is more informative for the trends we're seeing across the state, because we know Norwood is not an island. We also don't know what the future brings. We don't know the changes in the virus, not only from our activity, but also just the way viruses circulate and pandemic trends that usually happen. There could be different spikes and ups and downs. So like I always say whenever I talk to anybody, that these things are constantly changing, and we're just gonna have to work and do the best we can in a constantly changing environment. And because things are always changing, we want to make sure that everybody stays informed. So we try to do a lot of public messaging, but also ask that people log on and check things, be informed, be an informed resident, an informed business owner, to make sure you're hearing the information that's out there. Because like I keep saying it over and over again, it keeps changing literally from day to day. The guidance sometimes changes. And I mean, it's frustrating, especially when you're in the in the role of enforcement, but I also understand from a public health reason why. Data's changed, situations change. We know very little about this virus, so the more we know, the better we can prevent the spread, but it also means constantly changing what we're doing. So the first thing that came up with the reopening plan is the general safety standards really for all businesses. And these, like I said, for all businesses, and they tend to be more overarching. We all know about the social distancing or physical distancing of the 6-foot separation. And as we look to, as guidances come out, sometimes they're not perfectly aligned with this 6-foot separation, but I think we need to keep that in mind. An example we saw was with the tables. If you separate tables 6 feet, that doesn't necessarily mean the people sitting at the tables are separated by 6 feet. So sometimes things aren't perfect, and we want to always keep these general safety measures. This is just the first one in our thoughts when we're thinking about our policies and procedures and how we want to run our businesses, so we can continue to open. I should stress that the reason why we want to be pretty diligent at these things is because we want to continue to open, and that this is how we're going to slow and stop the spread. If we don't do these things, I think we will see an uptick, and we will go back to phase 1, and hopefully not beyond that. But we can always go backwards, as the governor reminds us. So I think it's important that we continue to do these things, and it's even more important, I think, as we reopen, that and we have more and more exchanges and interactions between people, that we make sure that we're taking all these precautions. So they are required for signage, so provide signage to remind people about safe social distancing, and of course requiring the face coverings for all your employees and your patrons. You can deny someone entrance if they're not wearing a face covering, if they do not claim they have a medical reason. Obviously, if somebody has a medical reason and says they cannot wear a face covering, that's fine. We don't question that. They don't need to provide evidence of it. But you can deny entry if someone says, I just don't want to wear a mask because I don't like the way it looks. Well, you can say you can't come into my store or my business or my office, whatever it is. We do have signs also. I do want to make made available. We have some nice laminated signs that we can get out to you, or you can pick it up, call us, and we can make an appointment in town hall, or we can deliver them to you either way. So definitely reach out. Healthma.gov is always the best way to reach the health department. Hygiene, hand washing throughout the workplace. We want to encourage our employees to do it frequently and provide them access to it. The better people have access to things, the more likely they'll be compliant. And a lot of my food service establishments know that. That's why we require the hand sinks everywhere. The better access people have, the more likely they're going to do it. So hand sanitizer everywhere, reminders to use it. The other aspect is sanitation of high-touch surfaces, frequent cleaning. And also kind of be creative and think about what those cleaning things are, like light switches. A lot of people don't think of that. So think about when you go into the office, what do you touch every day on your way in? And those are the things that you want cleaned on a regular basis. And then staffing and operations. You are required to provide training to your employees about social distancing and hygiene protocols. We want to definitely identify those employees that are showing or displaying symptoms of COVID-19 and have them not report to work. And if they are at work, have them go home. And then also establishing a plan for employees when they do get sick at work and how they return to work. And we can get into the specifics of that. If you do have a positive case, you will be working with us and the health departments of where your employees live. So the health department that has jurisdiction on the isolation quarantine of an individual is based on where they reside. But as we see clusters in our businesses, let's say an employee lives in Sharon, but they work in Norwood, we will work together with the Sharon Health Department because the cluster is in Norwood, but the employees obviously live in many different towns. So we have the ability to share that information in our online reporting system. It's not always perfect, so a lot of times we're chasing each other with phone calls to make sure we all have the important information, but having the businesses and the employers in that conversation is really vital because you guys will be intricate in identifying those close contacts of that case, who was in the same room with them, who had, we always say, a 15-minute conversation within 6 feet with no PPE. Those people would be considered close contacts, and we would look to you to help us identify those people. And then returning to work, just as important, we want to make sure people are done with their isolation and quarantine and that they get dismissed from their local health department before returning to work. So those are the 3 overarching general categories. Oh, I'm sorry. we talked a little bit about cleaning, but additional cleaning and disinfectant when there is, or hopefully not, but if there is a positive case in your work environment, there are additional cleaning requirements to be done. And everybody should look, it's on the CDC website to follow those requirements for deep cleaning. So each business is required to develop a control plan. There's a template on the state website. It doesn't have to be that complex. Just a couple pages. I believe the template is 2 or 3 pages, and it really goes through bullet point topics of those categories that we just covered, and asks you to just explain how you're going to do that in your business. How are you going to communicate to your employees? How often are you going to clean high-touch surfaces? How are you going to bring hand sanitizer easily accessible to your employees? So you do have to develop that plan. And then if we do get complaints, they can be enforced by the local health department or the Massachusetts Department of Labor Standards. People, customers, employees, anybody can issue a complaint to either of those agencies. The first thing any enforcement agency is going to do is they're going to come in and ask to see your control plan, and then they're going to want to make sure that you're following it. So that document is very important. And in that control plan, you will also be asked to document that you trained your employees. And there it's 2 pages. So as you can see, it's a quick checkoff box. And I mean, really, with each of those bullet point check boxes, you can just write a sentence to say how you're going to do that in your workplace. So like I said, it doesn't have to be too complicated, but it does have to be individualized for your operations. And there are links to these on the health department website, the COVID-19 website. There are required postings. You need to have these 2 postings posted for customers and people coming into your offices to attest that you have developed a control plan, and then you have met the safety standards. So it's actually 2 things you need to post. And again, these are available on the website. These are the face covering signs that I was talking about. We have both for offices and for sort of stores where customers might be coming in. So these apply to indoor and outdoor spaces. I actually put the quotation from the order just because there is a lot of questions about the medical exemption. And again, they're not required to prove the medical condition. If they make a statement, that is fine, but you can deny entry as long as they don't claim a medical exemption.
You resend that to me?
Sorry, say it again?
Oh, that was me. Sorry about that.
No problem. I thought you had to cross some trust. No problem. So now we get into the sector-specific guidelines, and there are a lot of them. We saw in phase 1 I'm not going to go through the list, but they had for each of those sectors, they had specific conditions that need to be met in addition to the general standards that we just went over. We just entered into phase 2 when we saw retail stores, outdoor dining, indoor dining will be coming later in phase 2. We saw safety standards, hotels, youth sports activities, personal services where there's no close contact. A lot of our businesses are waiting for step 2 within phase 2 because that'll open up a whole nother wave of businesses that do have close contact. So we want to make sure again that we're following all those safety standards. And the list goes on. Golf courses have been open for a while, but driving ranges can now be open. And again, links to all this is on the website and links in this presentation. So when we post this, when the data indicates we are ready, we will go into phase 3. And there's a list of the things that will open. And obviously, as things open, the things opening in later phases create more situations where larger people get together and there's more interactions. The big thing I think a lot of us are waiting for is the fitness centers. That'll be a big one for us in Norwood. We don't have a lot of these other things, the overnight camps and stuff, but theaters obviously big in Norwood when that opens. And then finally, phase 4, which will encompass those large gatherings. And all that will be data driven. So we don't know when we're going to go to the next phases. As I always say, I find out when you guys find out at those the press conferences with the governor. So we don't really have a crystal ball to see when that's going to happen either. We hear when you hear. So, and I always want to say the best way to slow and stop the spread is to identify those positive cases quickly, isolate them, identify their close contacts, and put those close contacts in quarantine. We also, as of I believe last week, now allowed to test close contacts. So that will help us identify additional cases quicker. So we don't have to wait for them to become symptomatic. We can now test those contacts to allow us to isolate them even quicker. So that's the best way to stop the spread. Screening of employees, encouraging sick employees to stay home. Even if you don't think it's COVID related, if they're sick, stay home, because we don't need other small outbreaks complicating this. And really COVID, we're learning more and more about it. These symptoms are constantly changing and we're finding more and more symptoms. It's anything from respiratory symptoms to GI symptoms. And unfortunately, we're seeing the rashes in the kids. So if you're sick, just stay home, whatever the illness is. Keep track of those who are working closely together, again, for that contact tracing, where I said the businesses will be really important to help us identify those close contacts. Be creative. I have ways to think of how to change your operations to keep people separate as much as possible. Also, really, to sustain your businesses and to sustain operations. You don't want half of your employees going out in quarantine. It doesn't help anybody. So if we can keep them separated, keep the face coverings on, avoid contact as much as possible. If you do get a case, it will have a lesser impact on the number of employees exposed. And then if you do have a positive employee, we ask that you do reach out to the health department and notify us, because if they don't live in Norwood, we won't hear about it unless that health department contacts us. So it does help if you let us know and that you have a positive employee. And we can also help you walk through the process of identifying who might be close contacts within your businesses. So at this point, I think I'm going to kick it over to Travis, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the resources that the town has for our businesses.
How's everybody doing? For those of you who don't know, I am Travis Farley. I'm the Recreation Director for the town of Norwood. I want to say hi to Charlotte from the center and Tom from the chamber. Thank you for partnering with us on this. Just some updates with the fields. Obviously, we've had a lot of youth sports and activities pull back from fields, unfortunately, with everything going on. We're just entering phase 2 right now, which is very limited play. Baseballs like BP, fielding. We're still asking folks to practice social distancing, not to share equipment, still wear masks. So there are some restrictions, but we would like it to open it up to local businesses. We've had a handful of businesses already take advantage of our 28 fields in town. Burn Boot Camp, Kinetic Dance Studios, Ply Bar Studio, Dance Force, Velocity Sports. We have about 6 right now. Obviously, we have a lot of fields that are open. So if there is any restriction on size and you're looking to do anything outdoor, please feel free to contact me. We can work something out. We'd like to obviously keep it to Norwood businesses that need that space for outdoor classes. So like I said, if there's anything we can do to help, let us know. I'm happy to do so. The only other restriction that I'd probably mention, and this is more of a neighbor friendly, if you are having any music or amplified music in the parks, like if you're doing a fitness class at Father Max at 7 a.m, we'd ask that you be courteous to the neighbors. But other than that, that's it. So if, like I said, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to field them.
Right. So what I'm saying though is because some of them are going to be operating and some of them go
Good.
I had a question for Travis.
Shoot.
Are the pools going to open?
I knew you were going to ask that, Tom. I knew you were going to ask that. We're working with Tony and the Board of Health right now. Most towns have actually closed up shop for pools just because of budgets and the regulations that we're getting to put down to open pools, like the limiting bather loads. Obviously, you're going to have increased sanitation, increased staff. We have to add social distance monitors to the deck of the pools. So I know you're not going to like this answer, but we are going to open Haas up this summer. I don't think we're going to open up FM, unfortunately.
Oh, you're killing me.
I know. But we're happy to have you and your, how many kids you got again, Tom?
6 at last count.
So we are going to open it up. I mean, I believe me, it's not a decision that I wish we could open up both, but with the increased staffing and the sanitation, to open up both pools would have just been unrealistic and unsafe. And to be honest with you, we're as far as staffing goes, we're brimming at just one pool right now, trying to make that happen.
All right. Thanks, Travis.
I know. I wish we could. I know you're a big fan of FM pool, and I always get that question from you every summer. So, I believe me, it's not something that I'm happy about doing, but I'm happy that we at least get to offer a water option to the residents this summer.
Thanks.
No problem.
Thanks, Travis. I'm going to just talk for a few minutes about some of the activities that the planning department has been focusing on. When the CARES Act was approved by the federal government, money began to stream from the federal government to the state, and in our case, the state Department of Housing and Economic Development, Department of Community Development, has set up some grant programs. And we've applied for 2 grants. One is a micro enterprise grant program for small businesses of 5 or fewer employees. And we are working with our regional planning agency, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, along with 22 other communities that have applied for funding, CARES Act funding through the State Department of Housing and Community Development. Also, as part of that same pool of funding, we've applied for money to assist people with housing payments. That could be a mortgage, could be a rent payment, or something related to paying utilities costs for a home that suffered impacts since early March when the pandemic broke out. So we are waiting to hear from the state on those 2 grant applications. And in a few minutes, at the end of our meeting, Patrick DeShanes is going to brief you on another exciting grant program that we are going forward with. I'm going to speak for a few minutes about outdoor dining. As many of you know, the governor on Saturday opened up restaurants for outdoor-only dining. Fortunately, because of the foresight of General Manager Tony Mazzucco, he got us going on preparing for that moment about a month ago. We worked together with police, fire, DPW, the building department, the health department on a set of outdoor dining regulations to allow restaurants to apply to utilize outdoor spaces. And when I say outdoor spaces, I'm talking about, in some cases, the sidewalk in the downtown area in front of their shop. In other places where there are bigger properties, it could be in a parking lot or a lawn area of that restaurant establishment. So work with the Board of Selectmen on a set of regulations that we could try to implement as quickly as possible. There is applications on the town's website, on the planning department and the COVID website to apply for an outdoor dining permit. We've had 2 forums similar to this one for the restaurant owners to try to get them up to speed and let them know what they needed to do to get ready for outdoor dining. A group of town officials met on Saturday. We reviewed 13 or 14 outdoor dining applications. All of them needed a little bit of work, and so in some cases we went out and met with those restaurant owners out in front of their stores to talk about positioning, tables and barriers and so forth. We were successful in contacting almost all of the restaurant owners, and the applications for outdoor dining received administrative approval from the departments involved with reviewing those applications, and they were sent to the Board of Selectmen. Selectmen approved almost all of those, and that paved the way for yesterday when we had a number of local restaurants finally open back up for business, and that was a sight of normalcy that we all wanted to see. From what I understand, it was a success, and a number of our restaurants were open for business, and it was nice to see people out last night enjoying the weather and getting out again. So we continue to entertain those applications. We have some that just came in over the weekend that we will be reviewing and hopefully acting on later in the week or early next week. But we're pleased at the success that we've had so far with that. I am now going to hand this off to Patrick DeShane, Assistant Town Planner. He's going to speak a little bit about some plans to continue our efforts to promote normalcy and getting people outside. Pat?
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, so kind of going hand in hand with the outdoor dining regulations that we put forward is an additional option of potential street closures. One of which is the closing of a portion of Central Street between Cottage and Nahattan. If you're familiar, it's the portion of Central right in front of Norwood Theater. This is a pretty inventive measure that we see throughout communities in the United States as a way to create place and a sense of gathering. And under normal circumstances, that's a great opportunity to bring people together. Obviously, with the current pandemic and the ongoing situation we have, this also enables us to provide extra communal seating options for anyone that would patronize a restaurant within our downtown, or even wants to take a walk within our downtown and be at the Commons. So this is it's a great opportunity that we're looking to conduct on a temporary basis throughout the weekend, and it's throughout the weekends of the summer. So it's currently ongoing. I know Travis Farley from the Rec Department has had a big hand in it as well, procuring the necessary equipment to conduct this. So we're looking forward to having this be something that serves a great purpose in an emergency basis, but maybe something that we could also take moving forward once we return to normalcy, and we can have this be as it was intended to be, which is a sense of creating place. So definitely definitely excited to see how this plays out throughout the summer. With that, I am going to turn it over to Joe Collins, who will talk about the Mustang Food Pantry. Joe.
Thanks, Pat. Could you move this slide forward one? Thanks, Pat. So in addition to support for our local businesses, we've also been offering quite a bit. We've expanded our social service network quite a bit by expanding food security programs, including the Mustang Food Drive through the Senior Center, as well as family style meals. We started a citizen information center. We've received calls ranging from anything related to town services to individuals asking about rental assistance. We've also set up a Norwood fund, which allows individuals a little additional money to donate, and we've been using that money to provide some financial aid to those in a great deal of need. So if anyone is in need of financial assistance, if financial assistance or having issues with food security, we have done quite a bit, and we still have those resources up and running and are willing to help out anyone in need who's a town resident. Pat, could you move to slide one? So within just Eastern Massachusetts, there are a great deal of business resources. There's an outstanding network of organizations that offer a wide variety of services to Norwood businesses, all of which are free of charge. If you find that you're in need of financing, some organizations have started to offer grants, technical assistance, mentoring, advisory. Any of these organizations can provide you and your business with a high level of expertise. We're also started to regularly share some of these technical assistance, some of these trainings, as well as webinars on our town's Facebook and Twitter page, which are on the next slide. Pat, can you move it forward one? So a lot of these trainings and webinars are specific to a business's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as just general assistance related to running a small business. If you're not sure which organization to contact or just have a question, please give us a call or send us an email. If we don't have an immediate answer for you, we will find someone who does. Also locally, we have a couple organizations who are also on the call today, to the Neponset River Regional Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Friends of Norwood Center. And I'll hand that off to Charlotte Walsh and Tom Borks. They can talk about their respective organizations.
Hello, my name is Charlotte Walsh. I'm the president of the Friends of Norwood Center. I'm also a business owner here in Norwood Center. So I've been living this experience, through this experience with all of you, and it's been very sobering and scary. And as a business owner, it's really taught me that you got to be nimble, and you've got to change and adapt and overcome some of these challenges. So the Friends of Norwood Center is here to help businesses in Norwood Center, and we can do that by connecting you with resources that you may need, connecting you with people at the town offices, or just, being a resource for some, to help or talk, or if you need something. We do maintain 3 different social media platforms. We have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We've been working really hard to amplify and celebrate all the messages coming out of the businesses in Norwood Center about your changing hours, the services that you're now able to offer in phase 2. And we just want to let everybody know to tag us, and we will do our best to let everybody know in our communities and all of our followers what your specific business is doing. Also, there's a lot of resources out there, and it can be very dizzying and daunting as far as getting things together in order to apply for some of these loans or grants. And please reach out to the Friends of Norwood Center if you don't know which way to go, because we've all been there, and some of us have some experience in reaching out for some of these resources and being successful in getting some of the funds flowing. So please consider us a resource also. Tom?
Thank you, Charlotte. Thanks for all that the Friends are and have been doing. So I'm Tom O'Rourke. I'm the president of the Neponset River Regional Chamber. We're located here in Norwood, but we do cover a region of about 8 or 9 towns. And what we've been doing is trying to really gather and curate a lot of the information that's out there. As Charlotte said, there's a lot of it. Some of it can be very confusing. It's hard to understand what's more important than other things, and what steps you need to take. So we've spent a lot of time putting that stuff together and sending it to businesses in our email list to give them the resources and let them know what information is available. It's all on our website as well, and a lot of the links that you see on today's presentation. So we've gathered that information originally around relief services, and now more towards reopening services and what you need to do and how you can open in a safe and compliant way, and how you can get your customers to come back and feel safe coming back. So we continue to do that, and we will continue to do that going forward. I know I'm going to talk a little bit more. Joe, should I go into that now or not on the loans?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so I did want to talk a little bit about the Paycheck Protection Program, known as PPP, and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, the EIDL loan. These are the 2 main programs that the federal government came out with as part of the CARES Act. There was a lot of confusion around PPP in the beginning. It didn't get off to a great start, but ultimately people started getting the loans. They came out with the second iteration of it later on to put more funding into it. And one of the nice things about that is we've seen the size of the loans go down dramatically, which means a lot more smaller businesses were accessing those loans. So then the question becomes, how do you get forgiveness on those loans? A lot of folks don't want to take on more debt when they're in a crisis. So to the extent that they can get those loans forgiven, it makes it a lot more appealing and a lot more valuable to them. So it's important to understand the forgiveness of it. The original iteration of the law did not give a lot of flexibility when it comes to forgiveness, and it made a lot of people sort of tread lightly or step back from those loans. Just last Friday, you've probably heard that Congress passed and the president signed the Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act. And it really is just that. It does provide a lot more flexibility to that program. So I just wanted to highlight some of the changes that were made for those that may have these loans and may be concerned about how they're going to pay them back, or if they're going to be able to get forgiveness on those. And before I do that, I will say too that there is still $130 billion available for PPP loans. So if somebody has not applied for a loan and does, now that with the new rules, want to apply, you can still do that. And you just need to you can go to your own bank, your own lender. So the loan forgiveness period has been increased from 8 to 24 weeks after the loan was issued. So you've got 24 weeks now to spend that loan rather than the original 8. They've provided exemption for forgiveness reductions when employment levels can't be restored due to good faith efforts. So if you try to rehire your employees and get back to the level of employment you had before the loan, as long as you make a good faith effort to do that, but you can't do it, you can still get forgiveness for those loans. One of the concerns was that 75% of the loans had to be spent on payroll, and 25% on non-payroll, such as rent, mortgage, interest, and utilities. They've changed that now to 60%. So only 60% of the loan needs to be spent on payroll, which makes that a lot more easier for people to handle. They allow small businesses to take a PPP loan, and you can also qualify for a separate tax credit to defer payroll taxes. So you have the option of deferring payroll taxes, which is the employer portion of Social Security, but not have the PPP loan. They've changed that. Now you can do both. They've extended the length of the term on the loan from 2 years to 5. That was another sticking point for a lot of businesses. 2 years is a short amount of time to pay back a loan. Now you can do it in 5, and it's still at just a 1% interest rate. They've also given businesses more time to rehire employees or obtain forgiveness for the loan if social distancing guidelines and health-related actions from the CDC or others prevent the business from operating at the same capacity as it had. So if your business is being restricted in the amount of capacity you have, you can't hire all the employees you had originally. So now you can still get forgiveness for that, even if you don't return to the full employer level that you had before because of those restrictions. And lastly, it allows borrowers to defer principal and interest payments on the loans until the SBA compensates your lender for any forgiven amount. So if you get forgiven a certain amount of your loan, and then the SBA has to compensate your lender for that amount of forgiveness, it's not until that point that you have to begin paying your loan back after that. And yeah, that was it on the PPP. And then just quickly on the economic injury disaster loan, they are no longer taking those loan applications other than for businesses that are involved in agriculture and farming. And I don't imagine we have any of those on the call. But if you did apply for one of those loans, they are still approving them. So if you haven't heard about an approval yet, that doesn't mean you're not going to be approved. You could still get that approval. They are still doing that, and they are still giving out the grants as well, the advanced loan grants. So that's what's going on those two. I know there's a lot there. There's a lot of good resources out there to get additional information about both of these loan programs, in particular about how to do the forgiveness piece of it. I know we've got a lot of that on our website, and I'm sure the town does as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. So I'm going to quickly talk about pretty recent action the town has done, which is to create a COVID-19 small business grant program. This program will provide funds to assist eligible businesses cover wages, rent, loss, or inventory and other fixed costs not already compensated by other federal COVID-19 financial assistance or relief programs. Grants up to $4,000 per recipient, and grants will be awarded to eligible applicants via a lottery style or selection process. So for anyone watching and for looking at home later, I just want to show where you can actually look and find information about this grant on our website. Let me just throw this on here. go to norwoodma.gov, and this is great. For anything that we've discussed today, and for any other COVID-19 resources. Top of the page, you'll notice in the left-hand column, COVID-19 resources right here. Accessing this, you'll find just a ton of information, both our Citizen Information Center, the Norwood Fund, information from the Health Department, press releases, restaurant openings, anything you can think of. So, but this grant program in particular, right underneath reopening information and resources, you'll see COVID-19 Small Business Grant Program. And so you have a detailed description here of what the grant entails. And specifically, I'd like to call out the timeline. Being June 9th, the grant has been announced, and our applications will officially be released tomorrow on June 10th. June 19th is the initial grant deadline. Applicants received after this date may be considered depending on available funding. And there is a lottery for grant awards on June 23rd, with initial grant award notifications being sent out on June 25th. So as you can tell from this timeline, we want to do a pretty rapid turnaround. Obviously, businesses have been impacted by this, going almost 3 months now. So anything that we can do to provide available resources to you. We want to make sure we get that out there as soon as possible. Like I mentioned, the amount of funding, we're looking at up to $4,000 per business with demonstrated costs greater than or equal to the amount requested. The non-approved use of funds, applicants and awardees may not use these grant funds to cover costs that are already reimbursed or paid by other federal COVID-19 financial assistance or relief programs. So anyone that has already taken advantage of some of those programs that Tom discussed about. Sorry about that. Just said all right. So yeah, if any business had taken advantage of the SBA programs, they would not be eligible for this option. Eligible applicants, though, for a for-profit entity with 1 to 35 employees, providing goods or services to multiple clients or customers, have a physical commercial establishment within the town of Norwood. That kind of makes sense. Have experienced a loss of local revenue of 50% or more due to COVID-19 closures since March 10th, 2020. Have less than 1.5 million in gross annual receipts, and have no outstanding tax liens, legal judgments, and are not otherwise subject to denial of a permit or detailed in Chapter O, revocation of license of local licenses, or the general bylaws of the town. So, as I mentioned, this is a great option that that we were able to put together with existing funds. As Paul mentioned in the start of the presentation, we're also continuing to search out additional grant funding through the CARES Act and the Community Development Block Grant Program. One of the options there was for micro loan businesses for grants for micro enterprises, as well as mortgage and rent relief. So two great options that that we'll be seeking out in addition to this grant program. Paul, if you have anything additional to mention for this, I open it up to you. Otherwise, anyone at home that's interested, again, it's on the town's website under COVID-19 resources. And if you can scroll down to COVID-19 Small Business Grant Program. And I encourage any business, especially any eligible business, to look into this. And if you have any questions at all on this, please send an email to CPED, which is CPED. Oh, I'm sorry, there we go. CPED at norwoodma.gov or 781-762-1240, and you can reach out to the Community Planning Department of Community Planning and Economic Development Department. So that's, I guess I will send it back to Joe, if you have anything additional to say.
No, I believe that's it. I think all we have remaining is a Q&A session if anyone else on the call has any additional questions.
This is just a call. I realized I made a big faux pas in my thank yous, and I thanked a bunch of boards and forgot to thank my own board. So really appreciate all the elected officials supporting us in these processes, and it's been very difficult, but they've been very supportive. I want to add Board of Health to that list too.
Hi,
At
I
this
just
point,
had one,
Go ahead.
I just had one question about the small business grant program. Is it need-based or lottery-based, the selection?
Oh, we have asked if applicants have already received any other assistance from the government. The businesses whose names have been picked out of a hat through a lottery process will be the ones that receive the grants. So we may factor in if somebody already has received other federal or state assistance, that could be factored into their eligibility, but anybody can apply for this grant program, and the ones that receive the grants will be selected through a lottery process that's described in the application materials.
Okay, thanks.
It doesn't look like we have a lot of people that joined us this afternoon. Does anybody else have any questions for anyone on the panel? All right, having not received any questions, I want to thank everyone for tuning in this afternoon and preparing for this forum. This, I think it's going to be posted on Norwood Community Media, so hopefully those that couldn't come in live will be able to view it and information. As we mentioned, if you have any questions, you can feel free to call the Planning Department or the Health Department, depending on the nature of your questions. Thanks again.